Welcome to 5-Minute Bible Study, where a 5-minute daily journey through Scripture can change your life. Today we continue our journey through the Gospel of Mark, and we've got a pretty sizable section today. This is chapter 5, starting at verse 21, where we hear about Jesus raising a dead girl and healing a sick woman. When Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him. While he was by the lake, then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. Here's a synagogue leader, a religious leader, a community leader. His daughter's sick, and he doesn't know what else to do. He sees Jesus, he falls at his feet, and he begs him to come and heal his daughter. Being a parent, I can understand where Jairus is coming from, seeking out God to heal his daughter. But then as Mark continues the story, he interrupts this healing, or he interrupts this journey to Jairus' house with a woman that he is met by on the road to Jairus' house. A large crowd followed him and pressed around him. Verse 25, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all that she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and she touched his cloak, because she thought, if I touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from suffering. Many times in this ancient culture, people who were sick, who had issues, even women who had issues of bleeding, whatever that would be, there were laws that dictated them being in the community, outside the community, healing, all that kind of stuff. And here's this woman who had been subject to this illness, whatever it may have been, for a number of years, and she didn't know what else to do. So she, throwing all her contemporary traditions aside, she goes up and she touches Jesus, and in doing so, is in danger of making this rabbi unclean as well. But she does, and she's healed. From just even this touch, she's healed. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him, and he turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" What a strange question, right? Why does Jesus ask this question? I mean, if he's divine, wouldn't he know? And he is human too, fully divine, fully human. I find this question to be very interesting, and different commentators have different reasons behind this question, but it's still an interesting question. You see the people crowding against you. Verse 32. But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." That's what salvation is, by the way. It's freedom from our suffering. It's freedom from our eternal suffering. It's release from the suffering that our sinfulness and our brokenness brings to us. Salvation really is this concept of shalom. It's inward peace. It's inward tranquility. It's inward. It's freedom. It's freedom from the oppression of sin and death in our lives. While Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus. Now we go back to the story of Jairus. "Your daughter is dead," they said. "Why bother the teacher anymore?" What a crude and cruel thing to say. Why bother him? Your daughter's dead. Let's go and mourn and have our funeral and move on from this place. Overhearing what they said, Jesus said to him, "Don't be afraid, just believe." I think it's interesting, we see this juxtaposition between the faith of the woman who had been sick, who just went to Jesus for healing, and he says, "Your faith has healed you." And now Jesus is telling Jairus the same thing. Don't be afraid. Just believe, just trust. Put your faith in me. He did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. And when they had come home to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion with people crying and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, she's asleep." But they laughed at him. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him. He went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and he said to her, "Talitha kum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this they were completely astonished, and he gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this, and told them to give the child something to eat. We have here two stories of great faith. We have here two stories of Jesus' healing and restoration of family and community. We have here two stories of Jesus in his humanity and also in his divinity. We have here two stories of faithfulness and belief. And we have here two stories of the power of God over our fears. Over our fears of our sicknesses, over our fears of our future, over our fears of death. Jesus tells us, don't be afraid, just believe. He is the great conqueror of fear, by the way. And so I ask you this day, as you think on these words, as you remember this passage, don't be afraid. What are the things that scare you? What are the things that hold you back? Are you willing to step out in faith and trust Jesus, to not be afraid, but to believe in him? I hope you have a great day. God bless you, and I look forward to seeing you next time on 5 Minute Bible Study.